This video is brought to you in part by Squarespace.
Oh, hell yeah. Everyone's now talking about Sonic 3. Okay, no, not that Sonic 3, just this other Sonic 3, which, yeah, I guess is cool too, sure. Right, jokes aside, I am genuinely excited for this next Sonic movie. And we finally got that long-awaited trailer. I know I'm a bit late to the analysis party, but I wanted to throw in some predictions and thoughts here and there. And when this movie is finally out, you can look back on this video and see how well I did, especially when pertaining to a certain tweet I made, but more on that later. And I'm going to assume that you're at least familiar with the first two Sonic movies and you have seen the trailer for yourself. Don't expect all of you to have watched the Knuckles show, but very sorry to some of you, this is going to paint my opinion a little bit. If you didn't want to waste an hour hearing me complain about it, wasn't a fan. Point is, I'm not going to waste a great deal of time explaining too many things, but I will point out some key differences when necessary, as well as some differences to what we might know about the video game versions of these same characters, because I imagine more hardcore fans will adore some things about this trailer, but take great offense to some other extreme changes we have already seen just from this tease. And this trailer did show us a lot. We never got a proper teaser trailer. Might be a bit too late for that if this movie's due out in December. And yes, I know the second movie also had a similar marketing style to it, but it does feel a little bit weird that we have not seen anything for this particular movie until now. Maybe it was due to the writer's strike last year or the general state of movie theaters currently, maybe even the critical reaction to the Knuckles show. Seriously doubt had anything to do with the release of Sonic 3, but I imagine the writer's strike did, as well as releasing up against a Lion King movie. Originally, this movie was set to come out December 20th, but as we see at the end of this trailer, it just says December, which is the smart move. No, I wasn't a fan of the live-action Lion King either, but it made all the money, and Paramount wants this movie to do as well as possible. But anyway, I'm not an executive. I don't really care when this movie comes out. I just want it to be good. And going by this trailer, it looks pretty good, but I have seen the other films and TV shows in this universe. So as hyped as I am, I do have a couple of concerns. The way I see it, it's going to be like certain other trilogies. This could be either Spider-Man 3 or Revenge of the Sith. And I apologize because I know a lot of you guys are early 2000s babies and you have a lot of love for those two movies, but for me, going into Spider-Man 3, I expected a darker tone due to the trailer and, well, the inclusion of Venom and the black suit, not taking into account the tone of the other two Raimi movies. And what I got was a tonally confused patch job of a movie. Sure, I've come to understand why people like it in recent years, but for my first viewing, I was very severely disappointed. And that could be the case with Sonic 3. As I've described it before, it feels like Alvin and the Chipmunks trying to be the Avengers. And again, the Knuckles show was just a mess. Then again, this could be like Revenge of the Sith. Now, quality of those movies aside, the third movie in the prequel trilogy is largely considered to be the best. That's when everything goes down, that's when the tone is the darkest, that's when things really pop off. A lot of child death in a movie series that also included Jar Jar Binks. And there's certainly going to be a little bit of child death in this movie. Getting a little bit ahead of myself. And I apologize, I am genuinely very sorry. I am wrong about Spider-Man 3 is perfect. Let's take a couple of notes away from the trailer. So, some things I've noticed here. Knuckles continues to disrespect the British. That bowling nonsense wasn't bad enough, he had to go and destroy Big Ben. Or the clock on Big Ben, or whatever the case is. Also noticed a little bit of rail grinding, very cute. And that goofy general from the first movie is still around, as we expected, and he still enjoys corny food joints, as we see from the Chow Garden. Don't really need to explain that reference, it's a clever way to introduce those characters in this universe. But apologies to any fans who wanted the actual genuine deal. And we're getting some Pokemon the first movie vibes, as Shadow strikes back from his goo cage. A different setup from what we saw at the end of Sonic 2, and I'll get a little bit more into the design of the character in a bit, because I'm really impressed with him. Team Sonic is basically Team Dark. Very weird, because that's the complete opposite of the beginning of Sonic Adventure 2. But yeah, this version of Sonic loves cops. And speaking of that cop, Cyclops is back and sporting a different uniform, so it's likely that in the time between movies 2 and 3, he got promoted to be a gun agent, which would explain why Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are so willing to comply with gun. We also see the return of Jim Carrey, who was reported to be in a fat suit, but surprisingly it wasn't for the Robotnik character, but rather for Gerald Robotnik. Yeah, Jim Carrey announced that he retired from acting, but he not only showed back up in Sonic 3, but we get twice as much Carrey. Gonna be be interested to see how much praise he actually gets from Sonic fans when we see a goofy version of Gerald. Now, I know that has a lot of people on edge, and for those of you who don't know, in Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow first showed up after Robotnik, and I love that he's still called Robotnik in the series, by the way, invaded a gun military base and let Shadow loose from his containment. In the movie version, however, it doesn't seem like Robotnik has anything to do with the release of Shadow. That still has not been explained, but it's likely due to Gerald's involvement on some level. In the games, he got taken out by a firing squad, but it's not unreasonable for Gunn to keep the scientist alive after whatever happened that caused the death of Maria. Just look at the end of World War II. Scientists did just fine after the war, despite whatever atrocities they helped engage with. Governments aren't so quick to throw away brilliance. They'd rather use that to further advance whatever military projects they have going on, and that could be the case here. But considering the age difference, Gerald might just be Robotnik's dad, or he could be a ghost.
I am
a ghost? Or maybe a hologram?
I am also a hologram!
I don't know, but I imagine he is still alive, so we have some sort of bad guy at the end of this movie because, as many of you can imagine, it's likely that Shadow is not going to be purely evil throughout this entire movie. So if they shift the focus over to Gerald, it's likely he's gonna do some Doc Ock nonsense, bringing Raimi's Spider-Man back into the mix here, as we can see with this weird black hole thing that goes on in this trailer. This is likely the endgame project that Shadow is working towards, and later or in tandem with Gerald. And who knows, maybe Robotnik teams up with Gerald, it's very likely, but it will be cute to see Sonic and Robotnik team up for at least a little while in this movie. As for Shadow himself, I gotta tell you, I was a little worried when they announced Keanu Reeves was going to be voice acting him.
You're a cunt.
The cold indifference in Shadow's voice plays off very well. Very reminiscent of the character a lot of fans fell in love with, instead of this sneering, evil voice that we have heard for the last decade from the character. And he looks a lot better than what we saw at the end of Sonic 2, showing off his exceptional skills with Chaos Control teleportation and getting more use out of his rocket shoes than he ever did in the games. Always wondered if he could just use those things to fly, and at least here in the movie universe, he has no problem doing just that. Also showing off his incredible strength as he gently twists Knuckles' hand in the correct direction. Guess they couldn't show the echidna getting his hand broken, but they certainly imply it. Then while Sonic's trying to act tough, Shadow moves so quickly that Sonic himself doesn't even have time to react, popping up right behind him and attacking Tails. What color is Tails? Black and blue. And then rocketing off into the sky with Sonic and launching him back into the ground, taking out all three characters in a matter of seconds. So for those unfamiliar with the character, or even for those who are, in this short scene, they are establishing Shadow being able to match, if not surpass, the strength of Knuckles, the intelligence of Tails, and the speed of Sonic. Knuckles proved himself to be quite the problem in the second movie, being able to use his strength to match Sonic's speed. And here, Shadow neutralizes it in a heartbeat. And with that teleportation, Sonic doesn't even have a chance to react. And you could also argue that his ruthless efficiency shows how quick that mind of his works, matching Tails' intelligence, taking out his enemies in quick fashion in the middle of silly one-liners. This is a character who does not suffer fools and isn't impressed with Sonic and friends. And we can hear that indifference in the first line. He mutters. Stevie was the first to point out to me, as she watched this trailer with me, how blasé and bored Shadow sounded with the whole situation. And I even like how the trailer itself doesn't make a big deal about presenting his first line. It's not some big grandiose statement, it's just a quick observation of our heroes, and then he kicks all their asses. This Shadow is more about action than he is about speaking, and I appreciate that. This version of the character knows what he wants, and he won't let anything get in his way, but he's smart about it. His fury is quiet and long contemplated. He doesn't seem to care. He's running into creatures similar to himself. I mean, that has to be a weird, trippy experience, right? They made it very clear at the end of the Knuckles show and in this trailer that Shadow himself is also an alien. That will be interesting. I do wonder if Shadow was his own creature before he ran into Gerald, as opposed to being born in a lab. That is a little theory I've been cooking up in my brain thanks to Shadow generations, but we'll talk about that in another video. Point is, that could very well be the case here, or it could be alluding to the fact that he has Black Doom DNA. Who can say? I'm only analyzing a couple of minutes from a movie I have yet to see. My point is, Shadow doesn't let distractions get in his way. He has a mission to accomplish, and he'll do so by being as effective as possible in every single move he makes. And I'm sure that motorbike is a very important part of that equation. Yeah, alright, it's probably just for cool points. They do an Akira slide after all, a mandatory reference for every single motorcycle scene in media. The hog-on-hog action has been an iconic look ever since Shadow's titular game back in 2005, and it's nice to see them embrace all that bad boy edge, and being voiced by the man who made black trench coats and sunglasses a regrettable style of the early aughts is simply perfect. Well done. I even got some Matrix Revolutions vibes in that quick shot of Shadow in the rain. But yeah, all of that said, there is another big thing I have to discuss, that being Maria Robotnik. If you follow me on Twitter, you might have noticed at some point back in 2022, I had said that they are not going to shoot a little girl in the Sonic movies. Recently, I retweeted it, and that became one of my most popular tweets I've ever made. Oh boy. Well, this trailer made certain that if nothing else, that kid is gonna die. I mean, they revealed Maria was in the movie in a body bag. And a lot of the shots are very reminiscent to those famous cutscenes from Sonic Adventure 2. And even more evidence, it's clear that Gun is not afraid of using guns. Hell, it's in the name of the organization. So yeah, there's a lot of evidence pointing to them gunning down a little girl. Hashtag cap that kid. And while I'm not opposed to some brazen violence, and I do agree that this girl is gonna get it, I'm still not convinced they're going to shoot her. From what we see in the trailer, Shadow and Gerald kneel over her corpse as gun agents swoop in, but they are surrounded by flames and rubble. It's likely that something went wrong with whatever Gerald was cooking up, caused an explosion, and Maria was caught in the accident. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a late movie reveal where it turns out that Gerald was actually indirectly responsible for Maria's death and not Gun themselves. And for whatever cockamamie reason, Gerald and Shadow just blame humanity for Maria's death. I mean, all of that stuff is already laid out in Sonic Adventure 2 pretty plainly, and it does make sense. It doesn't take that much tweaking to remove shooting a little girl from that equation. Now, yes, they could do it off screen or simply imply it, but I still don't think they're going to shoot the kid. Yeah, I know, guys, I know they did it in a game and they did it in an anime in the early 2000s, but that's not the world we live in these days. Not with all the school shootings and all this other stuff. A lot of things I simply can't mention on YouTube without getting demonetized. Simply mixing a gun into the equation would probably cause a lot of censors and parent groups to raise some eyebrows. This movie's on a much bigger scale than Sonic X or Sonic Adventure 2 ever was. There will be tragedy, there will be grief, and it looks like they're doing Shadow's character justice. But in terms of how Maria dies, I'm still standing by what I said. I don't think for a second they're going to kill this kid with a gun. This is going to be a PG movie. Kids are still going to be able to see it, but mixing in gun violence is probably a step too far for Paramount. So yep, sticking by my initial tweet, and we'll see how well I do come December. And if you guys want to come back and let me know how I did, please let me know. But all that aside, yeah, I am looking forward to this movie. I am still holding my breath a little bit. I did enjoy the first two movies, but they're not my favorite things on planet Earth. It's still crazy to me that we have a Knuckles without an Angel Island. That's weird to me. And I understand that would be hard to mix it all in, but that's always been my problem. Prioritizing this real world nonsense with a bunch of human characters I'm not a big fan of. I know a lot of you love Agent Stone. Seems like a very nice guy online, but I could live without it. And my own Jar Jar, that being Wade Whipple, is still out there somewhere, still waiting to ruin some sort of stupid scene. I haven't forgot that wedding scene. God help me, I've not forgotten that wedding scene. And it still feels weird to me that this silly general is involved in any sort of way with this tragic story of Shadow the Hedgehog. The first movie showed us this guy handing out Olive Garden gift certificates. Maybe that's how Maria died. Maybe she got caught in some tragic kitchen accident of Olive Garden, and now the gun agency gets free breadsticks for life. I don't know. But the mere fact that the general is meeting our heroes in a corny family-style restaurant, that being Chow Garden, still tells me there's going to be some whimsy and corniness and other such nonsense as we saw from the other two movies. So if you're going in expecting this to be a pure, moody, dark experience, probably not getting that. All that said, I also get the vibe from this one trailer that we have some genuine Sonic fans in the production of this movie, and while I'm sure they all love the classic games, this feels like they were waiting to get to this point of the story. And I know that some of the changes already and some of the expectations set from the other movies have a lot of fans on edge. Very understandable. Sonic Adventure 2 was a pivotal moment for a lot of fans. It was one of the first times a narrative for a goofy cartoon hedgehog was taken seriously and earnestly. It's the first time a lot of you guys as kids got to experience tragedy in your narrative, got some real depth to some characters. And because of that, the story and the characters inside of it are very important to you. There will be some changes here, but I can understand, as someone who was desperate to see Venom for the first time on the big screen, that some changes can be a little frustrating, and I imagine you're in for a couple of big frustrations. The fact that Gerald's alive is already thrown off a lot of purists. Still, I've been curious to see how they were going to translate this story, and I'm pretty excited. I think Shadow's done great. It's clear they're going to have some exciting set pieces here, but yes, I am still worried a little bit about Wade and the lack of other characters, but they said they're going to be making more of these movies, so I guess it's the girls' chance next time. I don't know. They'll likely tease us with Amy or Metal Sonic. Maybe they'll both show up in the same movie. That would be fitting with a Sonic CD kind of reference. But this is the last time I'm going to be very patient with these movies being on Earth. I get it. SA2 is very Earth-centric in its aesthetic, so it makes sense for Shadow's story to be here, but I kind of want them to spice it up a little bit. Sonic's world's so freaking interesting, and a lot of that is due to the environments. I'd like to see them explore it a little bit more. But I've complained about that plenty before. Man, at this point, you kind of know what you're going to get from this particular branch of the franchise. But yeah, there you go. That's my quick rambling thoughts on the trailer. Will they or will they not cap that kid? Let me know your thoughts, and if you're coming in from the future, how you doing? Let me know how I did. Before we wrap up for today, I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Jumping online and building up your own brand was always an intimidating thing for me, but Squarespace makes that a streamlined, fast, and easy process, all while making you look good thanks to their Fluid Engine, a next-generation website design tool that lets you tweak any of their many templates with easy-to-use drag-and-drop tools. And I don't need to tell you how useful websites can be, whether you want to build up a portfolio of your work, an art gallery, or a shop, because yes, they have everything you need to run your own online business, including analytics that help show you the strongest avenues of growth and help you build up marketing strategies, which include integration with your favorite social media networks. And they can even help you set up an online shop to sell and distribute custom merch. All you have to do is design it and they'll handle production, inventory, and shipping. Really doesn't get any easier than that. And to make it just a bit easier, if you use my link, squarespace.com/gameapologist, you'll get 14 days for free, which is plenty of time to see if this is right for you. And when you want to make a purchase, that same link will get you 10% off your first order. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring the video. Before we head on out, I do have to thank the folks who support me over on Patreon, and that includes Kyle Winter, Cirrus the Skeptic, Joseph Duncan, Sonic 2 Blue, Josh Strider, Trey Nobles, Hatsworth, Tiny Jericho, Ginger Bob, Jack of All Spades, Tristan Trapp, Meekers, Bo Bennings, Quote, Resident Fanboy, Miles the Prower, Singer J199, Sam Webster, Fish Flop, Lucas Lipker, The Bad Pal, Jonathan Dobbs, Clover Chats, Chad, Mr. SP, Cecil the Glade, The Dark Neon, Stefan Plakanica, 3 Monic, Graham J. Hall, Lenny X, Wayne is Boss, Lederick, David 20 Covers led a Rickroll to restore the helium. Trash Baphomet, That Pie Remain, Enerjack 5, Grayson Coniger, Xerxes the Renegade Jin, Ken K, Ven 101, Paxton Bisbee, Sindarin 7, Bunny in very fancy font, well done Stevie, Twilord, oh no, I've used up all the helium, what am I meant to do now? Man, you are like 3 chapters behind David, get it together. Eric Delgado, Crimson Rose, Roxas the Cat, Godzilla, Makuta of Salt, Gleam the Anomaly, Alexander Watson, Neil Gampa, Conan Kudo, the Lex, the most powerful ship in the 2 universes, Kaido Prower, Spearmint, Duo the Cat, Omega Man 21, Penn Adelaide, Daza S, the world's most unironic 8.5 tail stand, one more Sonic Robot, MT Mecha. I started reading a book on helium this week, couldn't put it down. Gob, the RSI, OGreatGames.com, Sailor Sebensol sending out an SOS from SS Sanjik, Salem Hollow, Siegfried Wilder, Naburnyard. I hope I'm saying that right. And KB. I am always humbled to see folks popping in here and old names still popping in to help keep this channel up and running. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for your support, and I'll see you again very soon. Toot toot, Sonic Warriors.
Before we head on out, I do have to thank the folks who support me over on Patreon, and that includes Kyle Winter, Cyrus the Skeptic, Joseph Duncan, Sonic 2 Blue, Josh Strider, Trey Nobles, Hatsworth, Tiny Jericho, Ginger Bob, Jack of All Spades, Tristan Trapp, Meekers, Bo Bennings, Quote, Resident Fanboy, Miles the Prower, Singer J199, Sam Webster, Fish Flop, Lucas Lipker, The Bad Pal, Jonathan Dobbs, Clover Chats, Chad, Mr. SP, Cecil the Glade, The Dark Neon, Stefan Plakanica, 3 Monic, Graham J. Hall, Lenny X, Wayne is Boss, Lederick, David 20 Covers, led a Rickroll to restore the helium, Trash Baphomet, That Pie Remain, Interjack 5, Grayson Coniger, Xerxes the Renegade Jin, Ken K, Ven 101, Paxton Bisbee, Sindarin 7, Bunny in very fancy font, well done Stevie, Twilord, oh no, I've used up all the helium, what am I meant to do now? Man, you are like 3 chapters behind David, get it together. Eric Delgado, Crimson Rose, Roxas the Cat, Godzilla, Makuta of Salt, Gleam the Anomaly, Alexander Watson, Neil Gampa, Conan Kudo, the Lex the most powerful ship in the 2 universes, Kaido Prower, Spearmint, Duo the Cat, Omega Man 21, Penn Adelaide, Daza S, the world's most unironic 8.5 tail stand, one more Sonic Robot, MT Mecha, I started reading a book on helium this week, couldn't put it down, Gob, the RSI, OGreatGames.com, Sailor Sebensol, sending out an SOS from SS Sanjik, Salem Hollow, Siegfried Wilder, Naburnyard, I hope I'm saying that right, and KB. I am always humbled to see folks popping in here and old names still popping in to help keep this channel up and running. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for your support, and I'll see you again very soon. Toot toot, Sonic Warriors.